get big game hunted a lot, but again, the battle cry, if the minions die in combat, is worth 7 damage. And that's just something you can't ignore, and that's something that frankly I did ignore, and it ended up looking like an idiot when it was all said and done. I did manage to get Mech Warfer though. I thought that one was really good. Mech Mage versus Druid is going to be this first match of the day. Neirea is going to be the one on Druid, and Strifecro is going to be the one on Mech Mage. Touching on these players' lineups, by the way, Neirea is coming with Warrior, Rogue, Druid, and Strifecro is actually coming with Hunter, Mage, and Paladin. So no Druid or Rogue in Strifecro's lineup. And not too big of a surprise to me.
Yeah, Strifecro, as you said, he's a big innovator, and he was actually one of the first players to play Mech Mage and bring it to a tournament. Whereas other people, in the first tournament after GVG was released, I believe it was actually maybe a Kinguin tournament. I don't recall exactly, but everyone else was bringing like Warrior and Handlock, Druids and Paladin. Strifecro brought Mech Mage, and he actually 4-0'd with Mech Mage in that tournament in the finals. So just it skyrocketed the popularity of Mech Mage, and of course Strifecro, the innovator of Mech Mage, I would have to say.
Yeah, a lot of people had builds of Mech Mage, but they were kind of all over the place. Like the ones that I saw that I took the most note of were the versions that were running Fel Reaver. And Fel Reaver was such a powerful card. But really what I think was holding that card back was sort of splash hate from everyone playing decks like Handlock and Warrior. There were a lot of people that were running Big Game Hunter, and in a lot of instances they were running 2 Big Game Hunter. So when you played Mech Mage and you had a card like Fel Reaver hit the board and then Big Game Hunter countered that, it wasn't the milling of cards that was the big problem for playing a Fel Reaver. It was quite literally that it was just getting splash hated by a card like Big Game Hunter, and so Strifecro had kind of taken that into account when he went into that tournament. That was the Kinguin Christmas event, if I remember correctly. When he went into that tournament, he had Azure Drake in that slot, and it was just a nod to the amount of value he wanted to get. He was punishing people for playing Big Game Hunter. He had a 5-drop that was drawing him a card and putting a 4/4 body on the board, and they were just stuck with a Big Game Hunter in their hand basically the entire time until Dr. Boom came out. But by that time, it was usually too late. He had leveraged enough board position and just enough damage that Dr. Boom was more than enough. So yeah, I definitely would agree. He was probably the first person to build the most consistent version of Mech Mage early on.
Yeah, speaking of this game, we have a fairly interesting board stage. Strifecro just being very aggressive right now, but Neirea does have some answers. Not only does he have a lot of great taunts in the coming turns, but Swipe is also a potential card that can bring him back into the game. But we do see a Mirror Entity in the hand of Strifecro, and I think in this matchup, Mirror Entity is actually... you can actually play it as just a 3-mana secret onto the field, and it's going to just have so much value against Druid, because all Druid minions are essentially 3 mana or more, or they're like a Zombie Chow. But not too many people are running 2 Zombie Chows right now in their Druid decks.
Right. It's definitely where he wants to be at. Zombie Chow certainly would have helped this draw out a lot too. He would have been able to apply a lot more pressure. So Sludge Belcher's going to have to be his play. And we talked about how well Sludge Belcher can test something like Piloted Shredder on this board. It's certainly no exception. It's buying him some tempo. It's getting him a pretty good amount of advantage and trying to set up a spot where he can really get the ball rolling. But I think Mirror Entity is really going to throw a wrench in things pretty soon.
Yeah, in Neirea's hand, the lowest mana minion is a Piloted Shredder, and you don't really want to give your opponent a mech that drops something really nice, especially at 4 mana when they're just playing 3 mana to summon that onto the field.
Strifecro's actually going to sack this Mech Warper here. It's pretty much done everything. Oh, he's going to use the Snow Chugger instead. I was about to say, I actually think I would have liked to see the Mech Warper sacrificed. He's gotten pretty much all the value he's going to get out of this game. He doesn't have another mech in his hand, and he's kind of he's scaling into his 6-mana turns. Like, how much more mana does he need from Mech Warper?
Yeah. I would actually tend to agree with you, but I wonder what Strifecro's thinking is. Strifecro's actually looking fairly flustered right now.
I think something he might be thinking about is that he does, since we've seen Mechanical Yeti in here, he has 2 draws that will really make his next turn super strong. Like if he draws something like he's actually got more than that. If he draws something like Harvest Golem, he can play out Harvest Golem, Tinkertown Technician, and Cogmaster if the Mech Warper lives. And if he draws something like a second second Mechanical Yeti or Piloted Shredder, he can play the Tinkertown Technician and one of those. So when he keeps it around, I'm guessing that's what he's thinking about. But Neirea's had enough. Oh, Ironbeak Owl, that's perfect for Neirea.
I think what else is that he doesn't think the hero or freezing your opponent's face is as valuable, because if your opponent is going to hero power anyway, which Neirea does, then he's not going to be using 2 mana for something more useful. So essentially, he'll have a 4 mana turn plus weaving and a hero power in the next turn. So this isn't the strongest turn, but it's all right from Neirea.
Yeah, I agree. He's kind of setting himself back up. This mirror entity is a problem now for Neirea. I actually think this is one of the reasons I think I would like to see Zombie Chow so much in these Druid decks. Is quite literally just for situations like this. Zombie Chow is probably one of the worst minions that mirror entity can make for you, aside from something like Doomsayer maybe, or like Explosive Sheep.
Explosive Sheep, yeah.
Yeah, but right here it's just like, what on earth is this Neirea dude to get into this game? Like, he's facing down 50% of his life total on the board. He's just going to have to heal himself for 5. So Ancient Allure is just, I mean, this is doing almost nothing in this situation.
Yeah, the amount that he's healed for is going to be less than the amount that's already on the board, which was 8 the previous turn. So essentially, Neirea has given up a turn with this Ancient of Lore play. Really nice by Strifecro, actually, to play the Mirror Entity on exactly turn 6. So it basically locks out Ancient of Lore and locks out Dr. Boom, especially Dr. Boom. Can you imagine if Dr. Boom were on the field right now and no Ancient of Lores were on the field at all? It would have kind of swung the game around, actually.
So Frostbolt and Hero Power is going to be on this 5/5, and the rest of this damage is going for face. And Neirea is in dire straits right now. He just took 13 points of damage and got his 5/5 destroyed. And Swipe, I don't think is going to be able to pick this up.
Yeah, Swipe is nice, I guess, but when you're looking at this board, what can Druid do to clear it? It doesn't really exactly have Brawl or Equality Consecrate. He's looking to swipe and potentially maybe get a freezing spare part. Cloak isn't going to do much.
You know, Cloak actually isn't the worst. I'd like to see him Cloak this 5/1, but I don't really know if he can. If he does that, like, he's going to die to so many things on this follow-up. Like, he dies to just a mech if he chooses to not Hero Power the Cogmaster down, so I can't blame him for that, but gosh, this is looking brutal.
Yeah, I guess, like, Neirea does have a pretty decent hand, and his opponent has 3 spare parts in the field, so I guess that's all right. But Neirea next turn, he'll have to deal with the minions on the board in addition to healing up some, because he just really needs the second Ancient of Lore right now.
Yeah, I think Finicky Cloakfield is going to have to come out of this Ancient of Lore here. You don't want this to get a second swipe to happen to clear this up, or even something like Wrath and Keeper of the Grove. So I'd like to see this Cloakfield happen just to really keep the pressure on.
Yeah, I agree. You're probably not going to need all your spare parts for an Archmage Antonidas, so I think this is fair enough.
Speaking of Keeper of the Grove. All right, so Cenarius looks like it's a pretty strong play here, but Neirea's also got to think about when he starts weaving in hero powers and how he does it, but I don't think he really has the luxury of playing around something like Frostbolt right now, so I think he just has to get the most he can out of everything he's got and hope for the best, basically.
This is actually really reminiscent of the Savitz versus Tice game we saw yesterday, where Mech Mage looked like in a really good position, but eventually it kind of ran out of steam and it was looking to top deck Frostbolts and Fireballs throughout the rest of the game. Whereas the Druid, it has all the cards it needs, but it's at low life, so it's struggling to put up taunts, struggling to stabilize.
So curious how he uses Reversing Switch. I think one of the easiest ways he could use it on the Sonoyatron and clear through these taunts and then keep pings going to face to try to occupy as much of Neirea's mana as he can. But I think he wants to keep his Reversing Switch.
Yeah, the Reversing Switch, I guess, is if you could use it in the future for things like Sludge Belchers to make it a 5/3 instead. Or you could just use it, I guess, like, saving it for Antonidas isn't too relevant.
I feel like he really wants to armor plating this 5/2 as well to keep it out of Keeper of the Grove range.
Yeah, I think you're all right with using one of your spare parts right now. You don't exactly need both.
Oh, you know what? Reversing Switch kind of does the exact same thing, actually. Because it doesn't need that much damage to push through. It only needs like 1 or 2 points to get through right now. I mean, Neirea's only... he's at 3.
Well, fortunately, Keeper, if he plays the Keeper right now, he'll still be able to take down the Ancient of Lore. And this is actually looking to be... like, if Strifecro doesn't top deck something like any of his burns in the next few turns or Archmage Antonidas, then... oh, that's the worst draw.
Oh my gosh. That is the actual worst draw in his deck. That's a second mirror entity, so this mad scientist can't pull anything out. Strifecro has almost 0 play this turn. That's relevant. Wow, this is like... I mean, this is a real turnaround in the making.
Yeah, imagine if Neirea draws something like Savage Roar in the next few turns. It could turn around. And because the mirror entity is on the field, if Neirea also draws a Zombie Chow or an Ancient of Lore, it could also be a really nice turnaround. And speaking of Savage Roar, here it is. And how close is Neirea to lethal right now?
He's got 20 points of damage, it looks like.
He wishes, you know what? If Strifecro doesn't top deck the burn in the next turn, then he might just win.
How do you approach that? Do you Dr. Boom and trade? He doesn't need to hero power. Hero power's not going to actually put him out of range of anything. Like, he's still going to die to Frostbolt. He's still going to die to Fireball. I can't think of a single 1 mana or like 1 damage spell that Mage has. Like, everything, it's like Frostbolt or Fireball or Pyroblast. Yeah, I think that's what he's going to do. I think you're going to see Savage Roar and trade.
Yeah, I think that's very nice. This sets up lethal, probably. I mean, there's a Dr. Boom on the board, 2 Boom Bots.
Oh, he's not going to trade. He's actually just going for face. So what else? Is there anything else he dies to here? I mean, he dies to like random silences, and he dies to it's like Polymorph or something like that. But I don't think that Strifecro's ever even really running these cards.
All right, this is the key drop. Mech Warper. No, that's not it.
Wow, that's game. Neirea just turned this around and took it. He stabilized at 3 health and was able to turn this game around.
You know, this is actually just the same exact game that we saw from Tice versus Savitz, except Savitz was able to top deck the Frostbolt, whereas Strifecro wasn't. The Mage put on so much pressure, and it looked like the game was almost over, but the Druid got his draws just correctly. He got the double swipes. He got the taunts that he needed. He was able to stabilize barely by the skin of his teeth, and unfortunately for Strifecro, he wasn't able to replicate the Mech Mage draws that Savitz got in the previous series, and he's not going to be able to take it. He gives up.
Wow, it is astonishing to me that on turn 7, Strifecro had 13 points of damage on the board after Neirea healed for 5 with an Ancient of Lore. Mirror Entity copying the Ancient of Lore, which is the only minion that Neirea had.
I believe he's only played it once ever in one of the very first ESGN fight nights when Hunter was just buffed. It was basically played after Hunter was first buffed when Unleash the Hounds was 2 mana. And when Unleash the Hounds is 2 mana, like, you're going to play Hunter, right?
2 mana Buzzard, 2 mana Unleash the Hounds, 4 mana Leroy was what was happening back then. Not only that, but like the decks that were kind of contesting back then were decks that also lost to Hunter. Like, some of the best strategies out there were strategies that just almost couldn't beat Face Hunter because of the nature of their builds. And we've seen a lot of adaptations instead. Wow,
really poor draw from Strifecro right now. And whereas Neirea has a really nice draw, he actually has the Goblin Auto Barber, which is, it's pretty much just a Neirea special, to be honest.
Well, we saw it played yesterday, and we actually saw it used pretty fantastically yesterday as well, where mirror entities were getting played, and they were getting countered by Dagger and Goblin Auto Barber. So they would give your opponent a 3/2 off of the mirror entity, and then use the 2-point Dagger to take out the Auto Barber that they would get off of their mirror entity. It was such a fantastic counter to that position. And sort of, you said that Strifecro's draw is kind of poor here, but I actually kind of like it. It's not very fast, but it's very strong. He's just got a lot of action going on. 2 animal companions and a kill command is going to be enough to really force Neirea to have some sort of answers to what's going on, or to fall behind very quickly. And since he's also got a Snake Trap on the board, if he manages to fade something like a Blade Flurry or a Phanonize, he's going to be in really good shape.
Yeah, unfortunately, Snake Trap is one of those cards that has been hurt a lot because Violet Teacher has been becoming more popular, because and also that Muster for Battle has become more popular. So players are running more of like the Whirlwind effects, the Fan of Knives, just stuff like that in order to counter Muster, but also at the same time it just happens to counter Snake. So
yeah,
I've been seeing Snake becoming slightly less popular post GVG.
Now, I will say that picking up a second kill command is something he definitely didn't want to see this turn. And I actually like Neirea's play last turn. It's pretty heads up. He uses 2 cards to get rid of an animal companion, but he's trying to buy himself some tempo.
Oh, that's not too great right now. Of course, it's always Huffer, but in this situation, I guess Huffer is kind of similar to Misha. Well, actually, you know, this might actually be the best animal companion because he now gets a choice of what to trade into. If it were Misha, then it also just dies to the to the piloted shredder.
Yeah.
or the Eviscerate that we can see in Neirea.
So he gets forced. Oh my gosh, Fan of Knives gets drawn. And that is like a perfect draw right now. I'd actually like to see him try to pop this trap first. I don't think he knows it. Does he know it's Snake Trap?
Yeah, I think he does know it's Snake Trap, actually.
Yeah, I would have liked
to attacked with the Barber last turn.
Yeah, I would have liked to see him pop that trap first. And then go for it. So I don't think it's going to make too much of a consequence this game. It feels to me like he's just gotten so far ahead on board that Strifecro is going to struggle to come from behind. He needed something that could unleash the Hounds this turn.
Yeah, I think he just values the 3 extra damage to face a bit more, and he's looking at his hand right now, and it's not looking too great, but it's perfect for essentially racing. Sap on something like a High Main will be great. Eviscerate just as the final finisher will be great. So Neirea is just pretty much fairly all in at this point, I think.
Good position to be too. 10 points of damage with 5 more available from the Eviscerate. If he picks up like a Sharp Sword Oil, the game's almost over. Or is it actually over? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 15. Yeah, a Sharp Sword Oil will be lethal. Even without the combo on the oil. So actually quite a few draws here that can win the game for Neirea. South Sea Deckhand, that's going to put him 1 short, I believe.
Yeah. You can still... I guess you don't go all in here.
I actually like going all in here. If you go all in here, your opponent's at 1, and you have a fresh dagger, and you have a sap to be able to take out something like a Sludge Belcher or a Houndmaster. So if you put your opponent to 1 here, it's just what do they do?
Okay, Eviscerate. But what are the benefits of saving the Eviscerate or using the Eviscerate now as opposed to saving it for next turn?
The Blood Mage. I think the extra point of damage can make a difference in this. It's the difference between dagger being lethal and not being lethal. So I like that he's chosen to do this here. And Strifecro does not have a way to deal with what's going on. Neirea is going to jump out to a 2-0 lead extremely quickly.
You can see it on Neirea's face right now. He's just showing his emotions so clearly. He's so happy that he might just be getting revenge on Strifecro after Strifecro 4-1 him in the previous tournament.
Yeah, Strifecro is kind of... You gotta think what's going on, because you saw him kind of lean back into his chair and looking at things. He's always very mindful, and it looks like he's kind of animated whenever he's thinking about stuff. But in this one, he's kind of looking at the board and he's going, "What just happened?"
Yeah,
it's turn 6 and I'm dead.
It's kind of like when Rogue things go really well. I mean, Rogue got so much tempo, he emptied his hand, and it's exactly how Rogue was designed. You get so much tempo from your cheap, efficient spells, you put all the stuff on the board, and you ideally want to finish off the game with 0.
I heard Reynad say that if he thinks that if a warrior draws 2 armor smiths in the early game, that you see their win rate shoot up to just an enormous percentage. Versus when you draw, say, 1 armor smith or just like an acolyte and an armor smith, 2 armor smiths just ends up giving them so much value throughout the course of the game. When your opponent, your opponent basically has to deal with these. And when they're playing something like Paladin, they don't really have much of a choice other than True Silver Champion, other than to give you multiple points of armor from it. So when you're seeing these high armor totals come in, and they're not really having to put in a lot of work to activate shield slams, and they don't have to fear too much about either racing or using their weapons extremely aggressively to clear minions. That's when Warrior is at its best, when it doesn't have to worry about its life total and play around weird reach combos. Paladin also doesn't have access to a lot of reach. So to see something like 2 armor smiths come in this early could really spell a lot of trouble for Strifecro.
Yeah, not only 2 armor smiths, but 2 acolyte of pains. You talked about how Neirea in some previous tournaments, he got some pretty abysmal draws, but I have to think that this is pretty much the dream draw from Neirea. Not only do you have the almighty Fiery War Axe, but you pretty much are curving out so well, getting everything, all the lower curving spells and lower curving minions that you need. In addition, you're getting all your draw mechanics in the very early stages of the game, which is so important in a Warrior versus Paladin matchup, where it's all about just longevity and how much value you can get out of cards.
Yeah, so he's actually not going to be playing 2 armor smiths behind each other. He's going to favor drawing cards right now, and with 2 acolytes of pain in his hand, really the only card that I think can make this draw any better right now is a Whirlwind.
Yeah, as I was speaking about lower curving very low, he even draws the Cruel Taskmaster, and Neirea is going to be so happy right now, basically.
Yeah.
Strifecro with no plays right now.
Yeah, this is looking pretty grim.
Now, we saw Life Coach yesterday in a similar position in the Paladin versus Warrior matchup, and he actually decided to hero power in this situation, potentially even giving his opponent another draw. Do you think he'll go for the... do you think Strifecro would actually hero power this turn?
I think
Does he even play the Aldor?
I think Hero Power makes a lot of sense here, but I think Aldor makes more sense because he just wants to contest this Acolyte of Pain directly and make sure it doesn't get out of control. Unfortunately for him, this is going to end up backfiring a little bit because Neirea does have a Cruel Taskmaster in his hand, so you're going to see Acolyte and Cruel Taskmaster come down this turn. He's going to pick up some armor, he's going to draw some cards, but there are more options available too. Like if he wanted to, he could end up taking out the Shielded Minibot and keeping his Acolyte around. But I think this is probably a better play. If Strifecro's playing a 3/3 minion and not taking any value from the battle cry, especially when it's powerful as Outlaw Peacekeeper, it probably means he needs a board presence going forward. So to help develop against that by just taking your value now while you can get it, it's probably going to be his best play.
Mm-hmm. I like the Sludge Belcher here instead of the Lotheb because it just contests the board a lot more. Plus, it kind of saves your Shielded Minibot. And also, Warriors tend to not be playing Lotheb of their own. So if your opponent doesn't play Lotheb, and you probably know your opponent won't be playing Lotheb, then you don't need your own Lotheb to counter your opponent's Lotheb. But Strifecro, he goes for a more aggressive play. He goes for Lotheb.
I think what he's trying to do is he's trying to keep armor under control right now because he wants to trade into this 2/2, but he doesn't want to lose board control. So when he plays this Lotheb, like say he had played Sludge Belcher last turn, he would have given Neirea access to just armor up Shield Slam and clear out the 1/2, and then he's left with basically no board again. So I think he's trying to avoid a position like that. And right now, this is just great. He's able to shred basically all this armor off and get a Sludge Belcher back behind this, or he can even play the Sylvanas if he wants to. So there's 2 targets that Neirea has to deal with.
Yeah, Neirea had a pretty great opening hand, but right now he's drawing into not the best cards. He'd prefer something like Minions or a Death Spite, but right now the board state is kind of swung back in Strifecro's favor, even though he's going to have a card disadvantage.
Yeah, not the best pan out. Brawl is also something that we've seen trimmed from a lot of Warrior decks lately, and he's choosing to run it here. And I'm curious exactly why specifically he's choosing to run it over favoring the cut, like I've seen just so many people do lately.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, he's not going to show the armor either, which is I was actually just about to mention that he doesn't really have a way to play around executes either, as long as the Acolyte's on the board, because the Acolyte's it's just such a great activator for execute. And so now when he gets into a position like this, it feels like it's a lot stronger. Like you're weak to Shield Slam this way, but I think you're okay with that. I think you'd actually almost prefer to see Shield Slams and executes right now, so that way your Sylvanas is going to have cool turns.
Yeah, fair enough. Unfortunately, there is another execute on the board right now. And Neirea is just going to make that attack just to kill off that slime within the duration of 2 turns. I think that's fair.
I'd be pretty surprised if unless Strifecro draws something that's going to really influence his drops, I'd be surprised if he didn't play Sylvanas this turn.
What do you think about using Hero Power and Quartermaster? Do you really want to get the full value out of your Quartermasters in this matchup?
Well, I think it's something that he's going to think about, but he may not have time to actually wait that long. So Quartermaster is definitely a draw, I think, that can influence what's going on. And if there's one thing I know about Strifecro, it's that he likes to get the most out of his mana. So even if a play is a little bit less powerful than something else would be, he's going to keep an eye on being mana efficient. So if he makes a token here and plays Quartermaster, he's able to play Sylvanas and make a token next turn, really factor into his decision. And the other thing to note as well is that if he's, like, say for whatever reason he's familiar with how Neirea's Warrior deck is going to be built, if he waits for Muster for Battle and Quartermaster, it's going to set up big brawl turns for Neirea.
Now, a pretty good draw for Neirea right now. Fire War Axe. Unfortunately, he isn't going to be able to fill out the rest of his curve, but I think Warrior is okay with that, playing it slow and steady. Would win the race.
Yeah, Warrior deck is it's one of the few decks I think that's just okay with floating mana because it has such powerful endgame threats. So it's sort of like the longer the game goes, the more it's going to get. And I think that something like Fiery War Axe is exactly what Strifecro was looking for from Neirea, just because he wants to get Harrison Jones out of his hand. He wants to get a little bit of extra gas, and he wants to get a body on the board. This 5/4 can't just be ignored. It has to be dealt with some way, and Deathspite is certainly the card to do that. Wow, what a pickup right now.
Yeah, even though Strifecro was pretty happy about getting a Fiery War Axe and actually able to play a Harrison Jones onto the field, drawing more cards and refilling his hand, I think Neirea is going to be pretty happy about that as well, because he knows Harrison Jones is off the table. It's a card that's in almost every Paladin, so you have to expect it. But now Neirea knows this weapon is safe, and it's a stronger weapon that he can put onto the field anyway.
Yeah, this is looking really grim for Strifecro. And Alex Strauss is available next turn. And then he even has Grommer's Activator after that. Lay on Hands gets picked up, though.
Yeah, lay on hands is a pretty nice one. Not only does it refill your hand eventually, but it also refills your health up after the Alexstrasza inevitably comes down.
This is actually like this game. This just turned into a game, I think, with that lay on hands draw. Like it was looking like Neirea just had such a stranglehold on what was happening, but this game is looking a lot more even. And so actually, if Strifecro is really thinking ahead here, unless Neirea has a second copy of Cruel Taskmaster or something like an Inner Rage, he's not going to be dead to Grommash. So Big Game Hunter might just be the play here. And then you wait on the lay on hands to use it next turn.
The problem with Big Game Hunter is that you're going to be, if you're playing Big Game Hunter, you're either going to be playing Sylvanas or pretty much almost nothing to combo with that. And you're gonna be floating so much mana. Again, Strifecro is a player that doesn't like to float mana very often. And it's also, if you play Big Game Hunter, you're going to be so weak to Brawl as well. So no matter what Strifecro does, I think Neirea is going to feel pretty good after this position.
Yeah, you know, when you put it that way, lay on hands first, I think is actually not that bad of a decision. He doesn't have much time to make one though, and this is a tough one. Wow, this turn did not feel like it lasted that long.
Oh no. Yeah, see, I think Strifecro is just, he might have even considering not Heroing Powering this turn because both his Quartermasters have been used and he doesn't want to be even more weak to Brawl.
Yeah, I think he's just going to go for it. I think he wants to just force everything he can. You know, it's a 6-1 for that Brawl to happen, and he's going to be really disappointed to see it. And this is a big turn now for Neirea. So much value being bought with this Brawl. Oh my gosh, and the 1-1 wins the Brawl.
Wow.
That's like one of the worst case scenarios.
And wow, Neirea actually, he uses his Death Spite. He doesn't attack with that Death Spite, and he actually sets up for another Death Spite. So that means, Strifecro knows he has to go out for lay on hands here, because that just clearly telegraphs that his opponent does have the Grommash in hand.
You know, if Neirea didn't have Grommash, that actually would have been a really good turn to make the exact same play, to force something like lay on hands from your opponent if they had it, which would really kind of put them to the test in terms of how they want to develop and move forward. And I actually think, I like using the Death Spite here as well, just because they picked up the Whirlwind. Had he not picked up Whirlwind, I would have tended to favor saving the Death Spite to help fight against something like Sludge Belcher. But when he sees this, I think he's totally fine with it. So now, this is a great Aldor Peacekeeper turn, but again, he's sitting at 5 health, so like, what does he do going forward?
Even though he's sitting at 5 health, he can be slightly more comfortable knowing that his opponent has used both Death Spite and a Fire War Axe, and Grom is already on the table. So then after that, you're pretty much looking at Ragnaros and his second Fire War Axe. And a lot of players had even been cutting Ragnaros from their warrior list, so not as bad of a position as you typically would see, I think.
Looks like it's going to be a quality Aldor Peacekeeper and Muster for battle if he's doing this. But it could be True Silver Champion as well. But I think he's going to favor just getting stuff on the board. I think he just feels like he needs something out.
I also don't think the 1 health that you you're going to be healing for 2 if you use the True Silver Champion. But if you use the Muster and kill off this Grommash, then you're only taking 1 damage, which puts you down to 4. And I don't think anything in the warrior deck really depends on whether you're at 4 or 5 HP.
Not in this warrior deck.
Yeah, you're basically looking at the Fire War Axe essentially, and that only does 3 damage. So you're pretty safe now at this point.
Luck it's drawn, so I'm gonna guess this is a Whirlwind turn. Shieldman's gonna follow it up, so still a healthy life total for him. But Strifecro is actually, he's kind of climbed back into this. He's only at 4. He doesn't actually have a way to answer this Shield Maiden very efficiently either. He's gonna have to drop to 1 if he wants to do it.
Yeah, there's actually
Silver Champion.
Yeah, there's no way to kill off this Shield Maiden without using a True Silver, and that means just attacking it. And that leaves you vulnerable to a Fire War Axe top deck.
Which is only 1 of left. And something like Baron Gen can also end the game, and of course Ragnaros can always end it from this life total. But he just doesn't have another choice.
I think he has to go for it. I mean, if he weren't at such a low health right now, he'd actually be in a really good position. He has card advantage, miraculously, after the double Acolyte draw from Neirea.
I'm really curious why he chooses to go the Pilot Shredder over the Sylvanas right now. I guess he just wants more stuff on the board. He feels like he just needs to deal with everything. Harrison Jones gets drawn for Neirea.
Well, that's a good one.
Yeah, that's okay right now.
Now, are we going to see War Axe? No,
Ragnaros. I gotta believe this is Big Game Hunter and Cruel Taskmaster's turn. I think he just wants to get pressure out.
Yeah, not only does it put pressure on the board, but I think it's really nice to clear off this 1-1 of the Paladins. You want to clear off as many minions as possible in order to set up for that Ragnaros the following turn.
Now, I think what Neirea is thinking about, though, is Consecrate. So we may not see this big Game Hunter come down, sort of like as a hedge his bets against that. But you can see it's paining him to not play that big Game Hunter. He really wants to get it out, but Strifecro does not have Consecrate.
I think Neirea is just still pained by the fact that he used his Death Spite, or he used the second. Oh my God, that's huge too.
That's actually a really important minion right now because that takes away Fiery War Axe for a turn.
Yeah, I think Neirea is just hurting himself based on the fact that he uses his second charge of his Death Spite as basically he used it to set up for his Grom. But if he had actually attacked with the second charge of his first Death Spite, he would have lethal right now, or the game would already be over.
Wow, he's just going to go for Ragnaros, and this is a 25% chance to end the game right now. This is an important hit.
Oh, come on, Senor Del Fuego. No!
It's the 1-1. Strifecro able to do what he can to try to get back into this, but I think he's just going to have to try to fade Ragnaros shots for basically the rest of the game.
You know, actually, Strifecro, in his decks, he only plays one equality. In his typical Paladin decks that you see him on ladder with, only one equality is used. So after that one equality, and I believe Big Game Hunter was used as well on the Alexstrasza, what else does Strifecro have in his deck to deal with the Ragnaros? Nothing, right?
He's got Sylvanas and Hope. That's what he's got right now. And I think this Iron Regal is going to be hitting the board potentially just to get extra minions out. Oh, it's so painful. Do you attack with this True Silver Champion as well? I mean, now's as good a time as ever. Again, Baron Geddon is a card you're going to die to. Yeah, but I think that's what he's considering when he chooses to use the True Silver Champion.
Yeah, if Baron Geddon is drawn because of the sequencing, because of how the cards were played out, Ragnaros will actually go off before Baron Geddon. So, it's not very good.
This is turning into a really crazy situation. Where it looked like Neirea just had the game locked, and Strifecro managed to stabilize at 1 health. And he's still got to fight through this Ragnaros, though. So one of these shots is really bad for Ragnaros, and I'm guessing that everyone who plays Hearthstone can pick it right now.
Oh my God.
Sylvanas. And it takes the Sludge Belcher, so I think it's a sigh of relief for Neirea that it didn't pick up. Oh my gosh, and Coghammer gets drawn.
Coghammer is pretty huge. Not only does it add more damage to the board, but it also gives one of the creatures a Divine Shield. So that's just more stuff for this Ragnaros to hit in the following turns.
I think this Ragnaros is falling this turn. That's what I think. I don't think there's a chance it's living.
Strifecro is looking for the combination of cards that will allow for the Ragnaros to die.
First one. There's the second one. Wants to get Divine Shield on one of these two. So that's going to be... Needs 1 point of damage here, so he's going to go for a ping. Doesn't get it, so it's going to be Consecrate used instead.
Oh, man. If Consecrate does go down, then I think another draw from another big bomb from Neirea could turn the game back around, like something like Dr. Boom or even Baron Geddon.
Yeah, Dr. Boom, I think, is definitely the minion that he doesn't want. That Strifecro doesn't want to see right now. This Boom Boss.
Oh.
Geddon is one of them, though. And this is a lot of pressure now back on Strifecro.
Yeah, again, Strifecro will have to deal with this Baron Geddon somehow, and I don't see any ways for him to do it with the current hand.
Strifecro just laughs at what's going on. Consecration! That is actually one of the ways that he has to deal with Baron Geddon.
He's considering just silencing the Baron Geddon, but I don't think that's the play. Oh man, this is again such a very tense game. Fire War Axe would win the game over the course of 2 turns.
2 more points. to the face. Neirea's done a 15. He's still got Sylvanas in his hand, and Shield Maiden gets drawn. I got to think he's playing 2 minions this turn. He's going to continue to hold on to Game Hunter.
Oh man, Dr. Boom is drawn
for Strifecro.
I think if he actually played Big Game Hunter the previous turn, he would have won. Or yes, Neirea would have won. There's just no way for Strifecro to deal with both Big Game Hunter and Sylvanas this turn.
Yeah, you're right. There's actually no way he could have dealt with it. Instead, though, you know, he needs that weapon. The weapon will end the game right here. But I think that's about, you know, a way to activate his execute too. Like if you do something like Whirlwind, they could potentially end the game too.
Oh, that's an owl.
Was gonna finish this off. Neirea. I didn't realize he had Ironbeak Owl on this list, but so something like Whirlwind, even like Inner Rage. There's a lot of stuff he could have drawn, I think, to activate his execute moving forward. He had a Shield Sand still left. I mean, it's still a few outs left for Neirea, but wow, what a nail biter. I mean, it looked like he had, again,